Hello ladies and gents, welcome back to the Amateur's Mind. I haven't made a video for ages for this topic, and today actually we are going to cover a huge spectrum of chess players, starting from the amateurs all the way to top-end grandmasters. I managed to bring together everybody for one topic, and that is going to be evaluating positions. And it is a very tough topic to manage and to teach and to handle, so I'm going to try to give you a few hints and tips and see how we go with that. And I'm actually going to present this whole video to you through a couple of stories, if you will. So a week or so ago I played this game with black, and I thought that the position got very exciting in this game, so that I would take it to Twitter, which is something that I often do when I feel I have got something to offer to the chess community, which is why I very highly recommend you to join Twitter, by the way, for the chess community, because that's a lovely bunch of dudes there discussing chess, adult improvement, and so on. So in this position, I took on f4, already thinking, actually I'm not going to tell you what I was thinking. Then I went for the fork, and then we had this position on the board, which I fully anticipated, and I thought that, boy, this would make a marvelous example or scenario to tweet about this and ask people about how they would evaluate this position with white to move. And I did so, and I did get a lot of answers back, and I got mostly the answers that I anticipated. And I'm not saying that I am a Shah de Freund there, or, you know, a negative Nancy, but I thought that the majority of people would misevaluate this entirely, and that's exactly what happened. Now, what I would like to do here is to actually try to open it up, to crack this case open, to see why people misevaluate this and what are the reasons why we don't get quite to the bottom of the story. So the first thing that I would very highly like to recommend / point out here that was a big issue is that in my tweet I posted this position and I said evaluate this position with black to move. Now that's very important. At any given time you can't possibly evaluate a position without knowing who to move it is, because that is a world of a difference one way or another. But this is typically a position where the request of, hey, here it is, evaluate it, is not possible to do correctly without actually calculating lines. So usually what happens in an evaluating exercise, and therefore in over the board chess as well, is that you calculate the line until you hit a point where you feel definitely sure that you have an evaluation of one sort or another, right? But here, the story is slightly different, and in fact, it is not a bad habit to develop this idea that even if you evaluate a position at a certain point, you can explain your reasoning why you evaluate the position the way you evaluated it with further lines instead of word stories like white has an attack, white has an open king. Instead of those, try to even then go like white is better because they have a plan of queen d4 followed by queen g7 mate. That type of mentality and mindset shift is going to make you become a far more accurate evaluator of positions. So let's get into the example. Almost everyone said white is better here for various reasons. In fact, I'm going to show you the tweet. So I put the tweet up here. I tagged the chess punks in it because that's where you want to be. Chess punks is the community where I negotiate a lot, not negotiate, but liaise or tweet and discuss a lot with. But of course, I invited pretty much anybody into it, and I got a lot of responses. And if you look at the general feel, white is better due to pressure down the f-file, his knight on d5, and so on and so forth. White is better, bishop pair, black light squared, bishop could become bad, and so on. Looks much better for white in my opinion, more space, white's pieces are more active. Not sure the value, but I hate it for black unless we can make a big chance. I don't know what that is. It seems like we are losing in the king side, queen side, and center. All we have is an extra pawn on d4. From my evaluation, white is much better. No play for black, and the d5 knight is a monster. I will stop reading here. You already can see a very crystal clear tendency there of completely ignoring the who to move and the idea of actually let's just have a look at what are the most likely next few moves here so that we can have a feel for what's going on. So for example, such claims like the knight is a monster when it's black to move and it's very clearly going to be a trade, not very productive. Second comment, white bishops are looking very menacing. Well, let's calculate a bit. So bishop d, ed and bishop f6 are extremely likely moves to happen, right? And almost by force, yeah, we are headed for this scenario where this is going to be traded off. Now, if I had posted this position on Twitter asking people to evaluate it, I still would have got a lot of white is a lot better or better, but the number of people who would have gone like, hang on a tick, white actually does not have an attack here, not even close. The bishop is utter garbage. The knight on e5 is going to be a beast. Black has penetration potential on the open file with the two rooks. Also can break on the queen side with b5, creating a new target. And every endgame scenario, every endgame that includes the knight and the bishop staying on board, which given that I can go to e5 at any given time is guaranteed, is winning or borderline winning for black. So the correct evaluation is that black is absolutely way better here than white. And now let's backpedal. We will find that this is virtually inevitable from the position that I posted and asked. So here, the trickery, and I was really curious how many people would actually indulge with variations, and you can see that there's virtually no one typing in a variation. This is the first a kingside attack with bishop d4, rook e1, knight e7, e5. So that is even like not a line, but just a sequence of moves for white. Play that. This is the first one, which is actually an engine that tells you the evaluation that someone did. So I keep on scrolling down, and nope, not a single line. And recently, if you have been watching my videos, especially the I Am Reacts videos, you will find that I critique almost every single player, or not critique is probably harsh. My recommendation to people to get better is to calculate more. And see, even if you just invested as little as a couple of minutes tops to see bishop d5, ed5, bishop f6, and realize that d4 pawn is not going to be captured without having to give up the dark squared bishop. Note that rook d4 here might be looking pretty cool. Actually, it's not even playable because after takes the queen can take because the e1 rook is hanging. But just for argument's sake, let's say I play a doozy. So even here it makes no sense because the knight on e5 is so damn powerful that it completely cancels out the power of the bishop. So it's just a no-go. The dark squared bishops 100% are coming off. That's a guarantee, and what's left on the board is miserable for white. Now, this was a blitz game, and I was fairly short on time, so I made a lot of mistakes, but I converted this super easily with black, and I will show you how it went, because I think it's quite instructive to see how little white has here, and how easy it is to play for black. So queen c7 was played to go for queen c5 because I told you that all endgame scenarios are virtually winning on the spot for black. That being said, b5 was a better move here. I played queen c5, which was good. Queen c3. Now I ridiculously missed rook e3 here. I played b5 and only then did I play rook e3 here. But by now white is completely out. Like the evaluation by now is -6. And I'm not saying that this was a forced sequence by any stretch of the imagination, but there was not an awful lot white can do from this point on to change the trend. And in fact, they did try to do logical things like stacking the rook on the f and then try to run this pawn down here to create some threats, but it's just all hope chess. In the end, I managed to score a beautiful mate, by the way. I calculated all of this out, and the Lichess mate in 5 and longer puzzles that I have been recently solving quite a bit actually have been helping me a lot with this, because here I calculated the checkmate sequence all the way with rook check, king here, rook check, king here, rook check, king takes, rook g2, king f4, and then queen d4 mate. So that was actually quite a proud moment for me that I saw all this. So once again, if king f4, then queen d4 mate, and the game ended with queen h4, g5 mate. So this was double pleasure for me because my evaluation proved to be correct. And of course, I did intend to enter exactly that scenario with that superior knight on the dark squares and the dark squared bishop traded off when I entered this knight h5, g4, knight f4 idea. Turns out that white had a better way to play it. So in this position, instead of knight d5, queen d4 is apparently a better move, because now bishop f6 is not available owing to the fact that this is on, although even that pawn sack is quite playable. But I would take black here any day of the week. Any day of the week, because again, this structure almost always tends to lead to its very close relative, which is this. And this is no bueno for white at all, because the knight on e5 just is the definitive most important feature of the position. I cover it up, I break with b5, no attack whatsoever on the king side, and the strategic and positional pluses decide the game for black. Now, after this, I came across, actually no, this was in the reverse order, but I made it swap around in the video because the next one is going to be really heavy. I started working on my next chessable course, and I came across a variation. I can give away as much as I'm working on e4, e5 beginners for black. And I started off working on the King's Gambit, and I came across a variation that looked like this. And at this point, the engine's evaluation is that black is slightly better. And I was pretty happy with that. And I thought, okay, let's analyze this just a little bit more. Bishop f6, hitting b2, threatening d4, queen d2, knight d7, knight c3. And here the engine tells me to play bishop e5 or bishop d4, both of them being slightly better for black. And I'm like, yeah, that's all good. But when I played bishop f6, in my head, the plan was all the way to immediately butcher this and enter a good knight bad bishop scenario where I'm going to blockade the pawn and I'm going to be standing better on every department. And I keep looking at the evaluation bar, or rather the evaluation of the engine, and it gives a significant edge to white. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? So I took this to Twitter as well, and the same evaluation happened. So once again, I actually tagged a lot of grandmasters in it because I was so shocked by the evaluation that I wanted to see grandmaster input to this. And to my greatest joy, actually, I tagged Anish, and he actually responded to it. Now, his response was not only very serious, which I particularly appreciated because he likes to crack the odd joke here and there, but he actually was very, very supportive and nice. And actually, that's the wrong way to put it because he's always nice, but he really took it seriously and tried to offer the insight of a super GM. And he says, yeah, it's no bueno. You can look up something like Nakakaryakin from ages ago to see how this kind of stuff goes wrong. Now, I really felt that this whole tweet was talking to me in a really supportive and positive way, because I read into this tweet that he knew that I thought that it was clearly better for black. Hence the, yeah, it's no bueno, buddy. Just look up the Nakakaryakin and you will see how this goes wrong, indicating that I think that it's all right and it's not. And that was quite a shock. And of course, everyone was riding the same horse, partly as a result of Anish responding first, claiming that, oh yeah, white is clearly better, f-file attack, kingside attack, protected pass pawn, yada, yada, yada. And even right now, I'm extremely reluctant to take on board those considerations, and I will tell you in a second why. But I find it extremely instructive that I consider this position to be far more static than the previous one I showed you, and so I had a far greater willingness to not calculate this any deeper. And so that's where I made an error, that here I actually opted to evaluate right away statically instead of engaging with a couple of extra moves to see how it plays out. Now, even if I had chosen that, by the way, my evaluation would not have changed and I would have still gone with black better, but that's because I'm not a good enough player. To my defense though, the only variation that leads to an edge for white is absolutely insane. So after knight f6, which I thought was best move with the idea of coming here or here blockading as per Nimzowitsch taught me, the only way to get ahead with white is bishop c2, denying knight e4. And if I go knight e8, queen g3 only move. And after knight d6, h4, I kid you not, only move to retain the advantage for white. No other move gives white anything at all. h4, only move. I would not want to believe my eyes. And I actually played out a few more moves, and this is very typical with the engine, by the way. Judith Polgar reflected on this during the candidates. It's sometimes just so infuriating that the engine gives you an evaluation that goes against yours, which is based on all kinds of bias, in particular here the good knight bad bishop scenario, and it gives you an evaluation, and basically you feel compelled to make a few moves to see how it proves it right. And no matter what you do, the engine somehow slaps you in the face with a tactic here, a cute idea there, and it just always works out to be their favor. And that's exactly what happens here after h4. And that is that now if I continue to play logical moves, queen d7, rook e8, and by the way, almost everybody, or at least the higher rated people who evaluated the position, said that obviously black needs to aim to trade the heavies because the minor piece ending with knight bishop is a misery for white. And that was the other reason why I thought that this would be clearly better for black, because having the e-file open and available, that is a tremendous opportunity for black to trade heavies. So I thought. So once again, knight e8, queen g3, h4, and it's just surreal that after queen d7, h5, I just don't have time to actually organize the army so that I could, start trading and build a proper position. So let me show you what I'm exactly talking about. I went rook e8, totally ignoring the h6 threat because I want to go g6, f5. But after g6 comes queen c3, and I can't quite play f5 here because bishop a4. And these are the things that I'm not a good enough player for to recognize and to appreciate, because when I evaluated this on a static manner, like, who would think about the fact that a bishop a4 skewer is going to completely destroy me? Like, there is no foresight of that kind unless you're 2750. And there were a few other fascinating ideas, such as queen f2 here with the double attack on c5 and f6, which also is, by the way, decisive to white's favor. Although even here, part of me is extremely reluctant to accept that this is clearly better for white. Like, at first blink, I would be like, this is not sure at all who is going to do what to my mind. But again, if we actually look into moves instead of static evaluation, rook e1, rook e6 is gonna be a total pain, followed by bishop b3, and the blockader is not firmly firmly enough installed on d6, and there will be problems down there. So I tried to play instead of rook e8 h6, at which point it turns out that rook f6, once again, like, hello, who is thinking about these tactical ideas when evaluating this position? It's just surreal. It's absolutely surreal to me. And like I said, a very great part of me still rebels against the idea that this position is clearly better for white. And just to test my theory about whether I'm completely off or not, and admittedly I was off about this, I analyzed the same position by giving black an extra move, excuse me. So I set up the exact same story, and the only little cheating I did was that I played knight d7 and I gave the right for black to move again, and the position immediately goes into dead even. Like, white has no chance for advantage whatsoever. The computer line goes knight e8, rook e1, knight d6. Now we have firmly established the blockade, and queen g3 is too late to the party. I can play g6, I can play rook e8 immediately, actually starting trading the heavies, and black has no problems whatsoever. So I feel like I was right and wrong at the same time. What I found very fascinating about this is that, actually, a lot of things. First of all, something that was mentioned by Grandmaster Peter Wells but also by Geary, I think, later down the track, and also by Grandmaster Kevin Go, is that we seem to have a little bit too much appreciation for a blockading knight, which is something that we were taught by Nimzowitsch, and ever since we have been considering blockade as a, it's like a key to victory at any given time. And very often it goes like, it's not quite that. So here is Peter Wells saying, great discussion, sorry to be late to it, surprise was yes, closer to the truth. I think I would be closer to the truth than a few years ago. So even a grandmaster now is willing to admit that they would have evaluated that position. And by the way, a grandmaster whose opinion really matters to me a lot, because A, he's an awesome dude, 2, he's a very accomplished author, and just someone in general whose, in my opinion, ideas are very worth listening to. He says that he would have evaluated that a few years ago differently than now. And by the way, that's the engine for you. And he says that we usually overrate blockading knights, hinting at play on the dark squares, but I have come to realize, as Anish said, that they are not always such beasts. So very, very exciting stuff there. I would like to insist though on showing you that, once again, with just one extra move, the whole position's evaluation is dramatically different. And to credit Anish Giri and the genius he is no less, I looked up the Hikaru game and I'm like, I was blown away, because I've got a fairly good chess education in terms of knowing my classics, no-die classics, and my recall of those games are pretty good, but I really have no clue about bringing up analogies like that from the last 20 years. Very poor knowledge I possess of games that have become classics really in the past 20 years. And he went like that, and I looked up the game. Actually, it took me longer to find it than for him to remember it. And here we go. Here is the game that he told me to look up to have a comparison. And tada, already the structure is strikingly similar. The only difference is that White doesn't have that extra pawn there and the absence of the f-pawn here. So the game that I presented had this structure, but essentially the idea is the same. Technically we have good knight, bad bishop. The reality is very different. Although I have to say that this position is actually dead even here. And after knight b6, once again the correct plan being the blockade, black should be at least okay, but a few small mistakes and Hikaru absolutely destroys. Actually, I will flip it back to white. Karyakin here. b6 is another mistake, by the way. And I think he may have missed his bishop a6 tactic with the idea that queen takes, rook takes, loses to bishop b7. Right? And from here on out, it is nothing short of a positional masterpiece. He secures the pawn, which again, technically is iffy. But in reality, it's awesome. Knight goes back to d7. Note that now the knight is completely on the wrong circuit, or circle rather, because it wants to be on d6. I mean, to some degree, probably he's still thinking about accomplishing this, but now this looks very far-fetched. And the white counterplay on the e file, the bishop on c6 denying e8 square from black, and the ability to do things on the king side as well, easy rook stacks. It just is a very clear edge to white here, and black is definitely on the back foot without any doubt. You can see how dominant the minor pieces are, and again that is a big contrast to the position I thought was a big contrast to the position that I offered for evaluation. g4, king f8, a4. Note how g4, by the way, absolutely decimated the knight, and now the knight can't go to d6 because that square is covered by every single white piece. It's already plus 1.7 here for white. And of course, f5 is essentially suicidal. Now the king becomes chronically weak, and Hikaru converts with ease. Like right now, this position is, yeah, just completely untenable. The interesting thing is that he even willingly enters the endgame, which you would think is bad. But now, of course, knight 8 is not possible because the pawn ending is winning for white due to the protected passer. And he just completely outplays here Karyakin, whose knight on g7 has nowhere to go in the entirety of the game. And really the rest is just a very clean mop-up with beautiful grandmaster technique, where he creates a second passer. And now the position blasts open. Two pass pawns will always favor the bishop. and he actually mops up in style here. King takes obviously losing to rook g8, rook g1, rather rook g1, rook g8, or even bishop g8 right away. A very sexy move, and the rook can't take because of the check. But anyway, this is already very far off topic because this position is not even remotely similar to what we were trying to evaluate. But long story short, Hikaru goes on to convert without any dramas. So to round off a fairly long-winded and complex video, I would like to say as a conclusion that it was a really awesome experience for me to have these positions on Twitter and have them evaluated by much better players than me, and in fact super GMs as well. It was a great feeling when I felt that I was caught in a moment of learning something new, when I was really confronted by something that to some degree I still insist on I thought was correct, and then it was just brutally smashed and like, nah, that's not how it is, buddy. And those moments are always very profound and interesting to face, because you feel like some of you have been questioned, like it's some part of your knowledge, which became obviously part of how you see the world, or chess in this case, has been just demolished, and you have to rebuild it. And I'm very happy that this happened, because I feel like I have become more by this experience. But to give you as well something to walk away with from this video, I would like to add that I think in any given position, especially dynamic ones like this, where there are obvious captures and further subsequent captures to come, I recommend that your evaluation is as best as possible is still based on lines rather than long-winded plans. Now that in this position was borderline impossible to pull off unless you had either the wisdom of a top-level grandmaster, one of the best in the world, or being a fantastic engine, which obviously is available at anyone's disposal. So very interesting stuff there. I'm going to continue these evaluating exercises on Twitter, and perhaps I will turn more of them into videos, because I think there's a fair bit to take away from it. Maybe the simplest learning, to repeat it before I say goodbye, is calculate, calculate, calculate. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this interesting. Don't forget please to sub, to comment, to like, to super like. And I'm going to be back with more videos soon. Thanks again for watching. Bye for now.